All right, so I met Roderick Sewell at an Ironman event last year. And the moment that I met him, my definition of inspiration changed forever because he is one of the most inspiring human beings and one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. Are you blushing?
I love it. Yeah. Like, oh my God.
Thank you for joining me here today, Roderick. I really appreciate your time. First of all, I just want to let everyone know some of the things that you've accomplished in your life. Okay. Ironman Kona finisher. Okay. Smile. Team USA swimmer. You're a coach. You coach swimming. College graduate. Olympic trainee. Double above the knee amputee. Anything else? What else do we have going on?
There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot to put in there, you know.
You run out of space on a business card, Roderick.
It's hard to keep my resume to 2 pages. I would say that. Like, it's very, very difficult. I think that says a lot about just kind of where my heart is. You know, I'm all about the support that I got to help me get to where I am and being that for the next and up and coming generation. So, you know, competing is more so for not just for me, it's for my family, friends, and whoever's watching that needs that little push, you know?
Yeah. All right. So if I were to write a book about you, Roderick, I think truly you have so many different things that make up who you are. But I think the love story between you and your mother,
Yeah.
really honestly, the thing that I think has laid the foundation for your entire life. And it really started when you were very young, born without tibias in both of your legs. And we had this discussion after the Ironman event that your mother had to make the decision to amputate. And I saw your mom, an interview that she did, she said, we had the opportunity to amputate. And I just think that word right there, opportunity. Tell me what you know about that decision that she had to make.
You know, from what I knew, she had never seen any amputees walking on prosthetics. So when they explained it to her, they were saying like he could have a life where he's just walking on prosthetics, living life from as he grows through his prosthetics. And it was strange because you don't see a lot of babies walking around at that time in prosthetics. So we were definitely like a test drive, you know, and she had only known people to be in a wheelchair or in some kind of situation where they needed assistance. So she didn't, having that option and that, like she said, opportunity, she went with it. You know, she had never seen what it looked like. She had no idea what it was like, but she took that chance.
Because had she not, you would have been in a wheelchair your entire life, right?
Completely different lifestyle. I think about it all the time. Like, I can't believe this is the way my life went from her decisions, you know?
Did you think about it a lot? Like, had she not made that decision?
Well, you know, she was just so unaware, you know, and she had a lot of people telling her not to do it, actually, to not go through the amputation. So it was a lot just on her shoulders.
Yeah, because that was the one question I asked you when you and I spoke at the Ironman event, was that, you know, I'm a mom and she was a single mom. And so I said, who did she have to turn to run this by or to discuss with or to lean on while she was going through this decision? And she had just herself, right?
Pretty much. He was, you know, my dad wasn't necessarily around for her at that time, and her family, like her mom and her sisters, they were nervous for her. They didn't really know what to do. And so they were naturally just like, no, just put him in a chair and we'll figure it out. And she was like, no, like this is a new opportunity we could have right here. And I think we should go with it. And from when I talked to her about it, she knew that my legs were hurting apparently because they were dragged behind me. So I would crawl naturally. And she said like, it just felt like dead weight. So she was like, get rid of them, get them prosthetics, get them metal legs.
All right. So getting the blades was another thing that your mom had to make a huge decision about. Tell me about the decision that she made in order to get you your first set of blades.
So that was actually a blessing in disguise because around the time when me and my mom were homeless and living through our shelters, we met CAF, Challenge Athletes Foundation, and working with them and getting involved with them and seeing multiple people with multiple different disabilities, you know, they naturally raise money for individuals to get the equipment they need to compete, to live a natural life. And so they got me my first pair of running blades. And my mom was actually the first person I raised. I put them on and she was the first one I tested them out on. She beat me still, you know, she was strong, so.
How old were you then?
I think I was 9 going on 10. So yeah, I was
19.
no, 9. No, I was like 9 or 10. No, it was, yeah, it was fun. And her seeing that whole lifestyle and seeing what CAF made for people like me, something that people don't see often, you know, and for that, having her son involved and seeing how happy he was, she was naturally like, we're going back to the shelter smiling. You know, we have stories that nobody understands, nobody would see on a normal day-to-day basis. And it's us, it's our life. So, yeah.
Yeah. And remind me, you guys became homeless because your mom had to quit her job in order for you guys to get your blades. Is that how it worked?
So the blades were, the thing with insurance, the blades are considered a luxury. So running is considered a luxury to the insurance companies. So they're not going to pay for any running blades. That's where CAF comes in. But for the basic walking blades, you know, it's still a huge market at the time. For one single above knee amputee to get a leg, maybe like 30,000. But as I was growing, you know, I have baby legs, so I didn't get the top brand. So as I'm growing up, my mom, she's working for the military, and she, you know, holding the house on her own, car on her own, and gave me everything I needed until I got older and I needed stronger legs, you know, better equipment, pretty much. She couldn't afford it. It got a little too expensive, so she filed for unemployment, which gave me full coverage for my prosthetics. But then you know, we left our house, we sold the car, started moving to apartments, and then I think I was about 8 years old when we ended up in my first shelter.
Again, why I say that I believe that the love story between you and your mom is sort of the story that sets the basis for everything. What do you remember about being a kid? I don't think a lot of us remember our childhood and kind of growing up. I know I don't, and maybe that's for another day, right? The decisions and why I don't remember some of that stuff. But what do you remember about growing up and kind of going through these experiences that you went through?
I remember my mom was just very like blunt. She was very forward with me about what was going on, and I appreciated that because I adapted faster. You know, she always called me her partner in crime because whenever she said we had to do something, I was like, all right, well, let's go. You know, I was just that kid, like, all right, whatever, wherever we need to go. And having that support, and then seeing the way people responded to me, and my mom seeing that kind of made her feel a certain way about me as well. Like, yeah, I'm her son, but you know, I'm living a life that people with limbs can't see themselves living. You know, a life that people can't even perceive. And I was trying to master it when I was 3. You know, so she sees the way people feel from that reaction, and she's like, I literally have a voicemail from her today, and she called me saying I was the best thing that happened to her. And so knowing that after everything went through, and then kind of having like, you know, you get older and you figure out like why things happen the way they happen. And I definitely went through a time in college where I was beating myself up like, oh my God, this is all because she was doing this for me. And she still like is pushing hard, struggling where she can. She's doing fine now. After Kona, she went back to school and got her CNA license. So she's doing a lot of it. Well, not at the moment because of COVID, but she's doing a lot of assistance there as soon as she can, working with the elderly. So
you're going to make me cry, like literally like tearing up right now to hear that your mom left you a message saying that like you're the best thing that ever happened to her. I mean, it's so amazing, the decisions that she's had to make and what you've gone through. I watched an interview with you and Rudy, and you were kind of talking about like, you know, because obviously you and Rudy both double above the knee amputees. He's one of your best friends, your roommate, your Kona coach, everything, right? And I've had the opportunity to meet Rudy as well. But you were talking about kind of growing up and how kids were mean, and obviously kids get bullied and picked on a lot. And what do you remember about kind of the strength that it took to get through that? And I could see Mama Marion throwing down, right? I mean, she was like, you know, my partner.
Yeah, you know what? She knew she couldn't be there for me all the time, even at a young age. So she made sure to implement in me to protect myself and stand for myself. You know, I was always taught to let bullying and like comments bounce off. You know, since I was a kid, I've been made fun of 2 things. It's changed now, but when I was little, it was always my middle legs, not necessarily being an amputee, but my middle legs and how dark I was. And so growing up with that kind of bullying, you have to reset, you know, and I kind of did a backwards motion. I had to reset over my prosthetics first because it was so different. And it took me years to get to the point where I saw myself as like attractive, like semi, like.
I found that really shocking because the confidence that I've seen from you, like in the short period of time, like it just, I mean, you need confidence. And so when I heard you say that in that interview with Rudy, I was actually shocked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think, what do you like, when did that sort of revelation come to you, and what do you think helped kind of get it? Was it sports? Was it just kind of growing up and realizing that what makes us different makes us beautiful?
I think you find, yeah. So it definitely was sports that opened my mind. And the older you get, you find how I'm definitely more of a spiritual kind of guy. So I like to look for God in everybody in some kind of way. Like I know that being is there in some way, shape, or form. So I try to keep that in mind. And, it took me looking at myself the same way, the way I looked at other people, and appreciating myself. And then knowing that there was a younger generation that was looking at me. Rudy and I just took a trip to Ethiopia with this group called Unkind Foundation. And we were making prosthetics for kids out there and teaching them how to use it and clean it. And originally we went there just to work with these kids, and the whole hospital just came to be with us, during this time. And it was amazing. And we showed the kids the clip from Ironman and their faces. Because, there's 4 days that we're there and they're talking to me. There's a, language barrier. And once they saw that video, their faces completely changed, the way they looked at me and then looked at themselves. And so knowing that, having that ability is enough to make me like, I'll pick my head up. I'll walk my chest out. Like these kids look up to me. They love me. I don't need anything else, and yeah, it's enough to keep going for sure.
Do you think about that when you're going out to train or how much, we're going to talk about Kona, right? But when you're throwing up
mm-hmm.
and in pain and don't necessarily know if you can make it, how much do you think about how much you're going to be able to influence other people in what you're doing?
Definitely in my training, I like to use my family as inspiration, and then people I don't even know. I've always joked that I live my life like my future wife and my future kids are watching.
Oh.
I feel like that's the way you should live, so that when you're ready for that approach, but I try to live that way, and having that mindset is, I don't know, it's kind of been my straight and narrow, I don't know how the better way to say it.
I think that's so such self-awareness,
mm-hmm.
To put out good and into this world and have good given back. We all should live our lives like our future children are watching us, right? The example that we're going to set.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Finding Sports, Challenged Athletes Foundation. I know you find sports and swimming is your thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was a swimmer as well, not as good as you. I'm not like an Olympic Team USA. I barely make it, a couple of laps before having to hang on the wall. But you are not a swimmer, afraid of the water, and
mm-hmm.
you get in the water at what age? Tell me about that process.
So I was terrified. I had an incident when I was young where I was almost drowned. I was very, very young. And, in certain communities, you don't have access to swimming. You don't go swimming, and people grow up fearful of the water. So you don't really have those people that are at the water helping you. I was naturally afraid. CAF got me lessons from Alan Boissard, who is still my swim coach today. I come to him with any questions I have, whether it's 100 breaststroke or a 2.4 mile swim.
Roderick, now you're just showing off.
No, he definitely got me prepared. He got me comfortable, and CAF for that because they made the introduction, and him and his wife have been godparents to me pretty much my whole life. So once I fell in love with swimming at 10, I naturally just grew to it, and I started Paralympic training when I was 16. I actually got a grant to go to China for the 2008 Beijing Games, and I got to watch Rudy get gold in the 200 IM, and I was like, oh my God, this is the sport I want to do, and this is it. And ever since then, it's just been a spark.
Didn't someone once tell you that there was like a shark in the pool or something? Did I hear that? Like, I thought I heard like a joke or something, or was that like real?
I know between Rudy and I, we like to joke with each other. We have another swim teammate of ours, Joe McCarthy.
Oh yeah, that's who it was. Maybe
Joe
it was
McCarthy, yes, that's who it was. Every year he's like, hey, there's a shark, sighting yesterday. And I'm just like, oh my God. Why would you tell me this? I'm like 12. And he's like, oh yeah, there's sharks out there, but you'll be fine. You're good. But we always mess with each other, and we've always looked to each other for some kind of inspiration. And Joe's been the guy to Rudy and myself. He's been the man. So yeah, he's quick to mess with me that way.
That was a story I heard. Okay, so you are a swimmer and you are running, and then Ironman comes and says, Roderick, you want to go to Kona and compete in Kona? And you're like, yes, but I have to bike how many miles? Because you had very little experience on the bike, right?
Very little. Very, very little. So that's where I can sum it up. 2019 starts, and we have Oceanside half. Rudy and I signed up for a relay. We do the swim. I think he beat me by like a minute and a half.
You guys aren't competing against each other, are you?
He's naturally faster in the water, but I feel like I got him running. And it took a while to get to that point, but so we do the swim. We have our teammates do the bike, and then I did the run, and I did an hour 39.
Yeah, now you're just bragging.
No, not that was my first time. I ran like 6 miles in Central Park before that race.
I love the time. Oh my God.
It hurt. It felt like the first time. I was like, this is not comfortable whatsoever. But Bob and Bob Babbitt and Rudy and I were shocked that I did that. So Bob was like, if you keep training, would you see yourself doing Ironman? And I was like, I wouldn't say no if I had the opportunity, that's for sure, So time goes on, and I'm still running more, swimming more, and I've been swimming for 12 years. So that's really where I built up my endurance. And then time goes by, and I get to stop from Ironman, and I'm like, I need a bike because I don't have one whatsoever. Thankfully, we have a guy down here, Jeremy, who let me borrow his Mueller hand cycle. And so I used that for 2 months while I was waiting on my bike to get here to train on. And now it's kind of in the corner, just taking a break.
What's the furthest distance that you had biked? And I think you told me you'd only done a half marathon, so you had never run a full marathon before Kona. And what's the furthest that you had? It was a hand cycle, which is kind of the first time that you had started to get. So what's the furthest that you had gone on a hand cycle?
Before Kona? When I got my bike and I knew I had to put in the miles, I think the most I did before Kona was 90 miles. But I would do it consistently, like every weekend, it'd be 80 to 90. But building up to that, I had 3 months with my bike. So the first month I would just ride an hour every other day. And then the weekend I would ride like 2 or 3 hours. And then each month progressively get more and more until I was doing 60 miles a session and then going up from there.
All right. So I'm doing Kona. I don't know if you know that. Hopefully.
Nice.
Yeah. So what's everyone, and whenever anyone asks me about doing triathlons, they always ask me what the hardest part is. And I'm always like, I can't tell you because it's all hard. Right. It's like each one has its own issues. But I guess the hardest, I'll go individually. The hardest part of the swim, which you're a good swimmer, but a great swimmer, the hardest part of the swim for you is what?
The hardest part of the swim?
Was there any challenges, or was there anything that, I mean, obviously you're in the ocean, there's sea life, there's sharks.
And which I saw nothing. I'm just saying, I was looking for sea turtles the whole time. I saw nothing. But I think I was in the zone too. I think it was, as we were coming in, the wind starts picking up and it gets a little choppy, a little wavy. That was the first time I got out of the water and was like, my stomach is actually kind of like in a knot, and I've never swam open water and felt that way. But I should have figured it out then, that if the wind was bad there, then it was going to be worse at Hawaii. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, wow, it's so wavy. The wind was just like really picking up, I guess. And then as soon as I get out there, I'm like, yep, it's here,
Yeah.
But I think that was the hardest part.
Yeah. And so the bike, again, I read that you got sick twice.
Yeah.
Not to bring that up, you did finish, but you got sick twice. Was there a point during the bike that you just thought, maybe I'm not going to be able to do this?
It was after the second time that I threw up that I thought, there's an opportunity, there's a chance here that I might not make it. But
Can't
there's
let it in your head, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah. Well, you know what it was? I knew, because there's so many variables, right? There's so many things that can happen. I knew going into it that a lot of things could happen and stop my racing. Some things out of my control. So if it was in my control, like my body's not ingesting enough, I need to slow down on how much I eat, how much I drink. Then it's funny, after I did that, I felt so much better. And I told myself, if I'm not going to make it, they're going to have to tell me that I didn't make it. Like, I'm going to keep going until I'm told that I have to get off the course or I didn't make it. I'm not going to stop like, oh, I threw up. This is it. Throwing in the towel. I'm done. No, you definitely want to keep going and just find out, see if you can make it.
It's a long time by yourself on that bike. I've only done 70.3s, but it gets really lonely at times, and especially the run, right? You really have to find it within here, right? Mm-hmm. More so than anything else. So you get off the bike and you see your family, and then you get ready to run. You put on your blades and you get ready to run. What was that transition like for you? What's your mindset at this point?
So naturally, in the back of my head, I was worried about the bike because I knew that was the cutoff that I would struggle with the most since it was my weakest. And I got in, and Rudy told me I had 30 minutes to spare. I was like, oh, yes, nice. And so going into the run, I felt more confident because I was stronger on the run. And if you think about it, I hadn't used my legs all day. It's been swimming and biking on my arms pretty much. So I was fresh. I was ready. I took the first 9 miles very, very fast, way too fast. But it's so hard because there's so many people. And then you see people that you met or talked to, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it, And so it's hard not to get caught up. But mile 11, I started walking for sure. Yeah. And my rule was just walk when you needed to.
Yeah, there's no shame in that. I mean, I think I remember my first long distance where I felt like I had to run. And then you just realize that it's not about it's just about getting to the finish, right? It's just about you're just getting there. I think on the Ironman, when you sign the paperwork and on the website and stuff, it says you can walk, run, or crawl to the finish line.
It's done. That's it.
I think I've thought about that before. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you cross the finish line. And again, back to your mom. I mean, she leans into you and she says, I'm so proud of you. And you said that she had never really been a part of the whole triathlon stuff, right? She didn't really know kind of what you were doing.
So I didn't tell her anything came race day. I didn't tell her anything.
What do you mean anything?
So what I told her was, because she'd been to CAF triathlon in San Diego, and it's very, very, a lot smaller, a little shorter than a half. And so she's thinking it's like that. I was like, no. So the night before, we had, this is Kona. So, we have the night before we celebrate, we get ready for the race. We're prepping everybody up. They're showing the videos of the race, and my mom's sitting there watching, and she just turns to me, and she's like, you didn't tell me any of this. I didn't know it's going to be this hard. And I'm just looking at her like.
Worried, so worried.
She was stressed. She had a stressful day. Oh, where's my baby? All that stuff. But she, I wanted it to be that way because she had missed out on so much of my life when I went to college, when I moved back to San Diego, when I lived at the training center, and then now living in New York. I thought she should be a part of that one for sure. And she needed a vacation for sure. So
she says to you, I'm so proud of you. And obviously she calls you and tells you, messages like you just shared with us. But when you hear those words and you're physically just exhausted and mentally exhausted and emotionally exhausted, and you hear those words from this, your mom, the woman who's been everything to you, what is that moment like for you? Do you even remember? Are you so kind of just try, I made it?
I still see it like yesterday. It's mind blowing. I remember she was in tears, and she tried to give me a towel, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine." She's crying into my face. And I don't tell people this. I'm gonna tell you this, but I definitely shed a tear on her cheek too. I was like, "Oh, I did it. We got it done. It's complete." And she was just so hyped. She made sure I was okay, And then I told her yes. And then she was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this. Like, you really did this. And that moment, that little spark, I feel like set a pace for a lot of people. And I promise you, I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything like that, but
I'm just playing with you, you know.
no, I
Away.
like you said, you spend a lot of time out there on your own. And so I'm thinking about who's watching. I'm thinking about who needs to see this. I'm thinking about who's going through their own struggles. And, you know, doing an Ironman is hard for anybody, any single person. And I think people know that because I was able to do it with my disability and overcome it, there's a way. There's always a way. There's always a possibility. Because there's plenty of chances where I could have not finished. Like, I almost missed the run cutoff because I was walking a little too much, you know? But having that and knowing that, just that reminder that anything truly is possible.
So I loved how you just did air quotes around your disability, because I had scoliosis when I was younger. I have rods in my back, and I'm on some kind of blogs about scoliosis, and I've seen people refer to scoliosis and having the rods as a disability. And it's always like taken me, because like I've never ever thought about it that way. And when you do this, I just think that's so telling about like how you see your life and you see what you your experiences, and being a double above the knee amputee and having blades and doing all this stuff. It's almost like it's not a disability to you, right? It's this, right?
For me, I didn't know I didn't know that there was anybody else like me until I met Rudy, you know? And then when I met Rudy, I was like instantly like, oh, that's what they're seeing. Okay, all right. And then we naturally became brothers then. But
it's only a disability if you let it be a disability.
Let it be, you know? And I say that because I know a lot of people with disabilities who are doing more than people who are
Amen.
You know, and it's like, well, who's to say they're disabled? Just because, like, that's a label at this point. It's not so much, it's more, I'm not going to take it to name calling, but it's more so just like,
it's a skill that people put on you. Like I read that you said like it's crazy how many people try to help me when I'm on when I'm out there like doing a triathlon, and it's like, hey, do you realize I'm doing this? Like
right. And no, it's the little things. Like, I'll go to the airport and TSA, every time I walk through, I have to get the wand, get the everything. And they're like, sit me down. They're like, oh, sir, you need assistance standing up. And I'm just like, man, I'm almost 30. I've been getting up all my life by myself.
You're like, how did I make it to this age without your help?
Right. Thank you so much. But, people just want to be nice. They don't know. People just want to be supportive and helpful where they can. So I do appreciate it. But it's about changing that stereotype or that idea of what somebody is when they're disabled. Because I know a lot of people who are physically capable and mentally, they just are holding themselves back. And that's the true disability.
I mean, literally, I'm going to take this entire interview and I'm going to write quotes that you said during this interview, put them on my vision board. Because again, I started this by saying that you're one of the most inspiring human beings that I've ever met in my entire life. And certainly this only put that home and put that in my head a little bit more. Before I let you go, I just want to know where do you think you'd be without sports? Where do you think you'd be without Ironman and swimming and running and biking and all of that stuff?
I struggle with this question because I always feel like I would have been me. At this point in time, I feel like I know myself pretty well. And regardless of whatever struggle, I feel like I would have overcame it. But having those individuals who I can look to or rely to, like Rudy and my mom and there's multiple others that I met through CAF, and then triathlon and Paralympics, it's enough to remind me that regardless of whatever situation I came up in, whether it was, I could have came out, if I did live life in a wheelchair, I still would have been the person I am today,
You would have found another way to kick ass doing whatever you decided to kick ass in, you would kick ass in.
Some way, shape, or form, somehow.
I totally believe it. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us when Brent got to do the interview with you on the Ironman conference call, and I was like, I want to do an interview.
Oh, that was fun.
I'm so happy to see your face and to talk to you. Tell Rudy I said hi, and please, next time you see your mom, give her a big hug, because she's such an inspiration to all of us moms just trying to get it right.
Will do. Thank you for having me.
All right, Roderick. Thank you.